The moon was a pale silver coin in the sky, its light trickling like liquid over the forest floor. Trees loomed on either side of the narrow path, their branches knotted like ancient fingers. In the hush of the night, every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant song of a nightbird, felt sharper, clearer, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Elara's steps were slow, careful. She didn't remember how she had come to this place, only that her heart had been heavy, and the world she knew had felt too sharp, too loud. So she had wandered, and now she stood in a forest that seemed to exist somewhere between dreams and memory. The path wound ahead, lit only by a faint glow, a single lantern swaying gently from a gnarled branch. It was an odd sight. The lantern was crafted of silver filigree, delicate and old, and its flame burned softly, a light that flickered with an otherworldly hue. Elara stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. She reached out, fingers trembling, and the moment she touched the lantern, she felt a warmth spread through her as if the light had seeped into her veins. The forest around her shifted, shadows drew back, and the trees seemed to sigh in relief. A voice soft as the wind spoke from the darkness. "Why do you wander so, child of the mortal world?" Elara turned. From the shadows emerged a woman clad in a cloak of midnight blue, her hair woven with starlight. Her eyes were ancient pools of quiet understanding. She carried no torch, no staff, only a single silver lantern, much like the one Elara had found. "I don't know," Elara whispered, her voice small in the vastness of the forest. "I felt lost, like there was something calling me, something I needed to find." The woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Many come here seeking what they have lost, but few are chosen to carry the light." She stepped forward, holding out her own lantern. "Do you wish to become a keeper of stories, Elara? To guide those who cannot find their way home?" Elara hesitated, then nodded. She didn't understand how the woman knew her name, but the truth in those words resonated in her chest like the echo of a bell. The woman smiled. "Then take this." She placed the silver lantern in Elara's hands. "It is more than light. It is memory. It is hope. Guard it well." As the lantern settled into Elara's palms, she felt a rush of warmth, of purpose. The forest brightened around her, the path now clear beneath the lantern's gentle glow. The woman stepped back, her form beginning to fade like mist in moonlight. "Remember, Elara," she said softly. "Each light holds a story, and each story a soul. In guiding them, you will find your own." And then she was gone, leaving Elara standing alone on the path, the silver lantern a quiet heartbeat in her hands. For the first time in what felt like forever, Elara did not feel lost. She had a path, a purpose, and a light to guide her way. Elara walked the path, the silver lantern cradled in her hands like a fragile promise. Its light reached out to the darkness around her, a soft glow that seemed to push back the night. Yet beyond the pool of light, shadows shifted and murmured, as if the forest itself had secrets it wasn't ready to share. The night grew deeper. The trees rose taller, their trunks twisted into shapes that seemed to watch her, silent sentinels of an ancient realm. The wind sighed through the branches, carrying voices she could almost understand, half-formed words like memories of a dream she couldn't quite hold. She paused, feeling a prickle at the back of her neck. "Who's there?" she asked softly. From the darkness stepped a figure, thin and wraith-like, cloaked in tattered robes that trailed like mist across the forest floor. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but when it spoke, its voice was gentle, almost sorrowful and keeper. It whispered, "Will you listen to the stories of the lost?" Elara tightened her grip on the lantern, feeling its warmth steady her heart. "I will listen," she said, her voice firm despite the fear that fluttered in her chest. The figure drew closer. "I am called a whispering shadow. We are the echoes of those who have forgotten themselves. In the light of your lantern, we remember, if only for a moment." Elara nodded, raising the lantern higher. Its silver light fell upon the figure, and she saw not a monster, but a face, old and worn, eyes dark with memories long buried. The figure sighed as if the light soothed the ache of centuries. Once it said softly, I was a scribe recording the stories of a kingdom lost to time. But when the kingdom fell, so too did my name my purpose. I wandered searching for the words I had lost until I became nothing but a whisper. Elara listened, her heart aching for the sorrow in the figure's voice. "You are not nothing," she said gently. "Your story is here in the light. It matters." The figure bowed its head. "Thank you, Keeper. I had feared the world had forgotten me." And as it spoke, the lantern's light grew brighter, a soft silver glow that seemed to wrap the figure in a cocoon of memory. For a moment, the forest fell silent. The wind stilled, and the trees seemed to lean closer, as if honoring the memory that had been reclaimed. Then, with a final sigh, the figure faded, dissolving into the light of the lantern. Elara stood alone once more, but the lantern was brighter now, its glow steadier. She understood now what it meant to be a keeper. Each shadow was a soul, each whisper a story waiting to be heard. She took a deep breath and continued down the path, the silver light a beacon in the darkness. The forest shifted around her, the air heavy with the weight of ancient memories. She knew there would be more shadows, more stories, but she was ready. For the first time, she felt the truth of the woman's words. In guiding others, she was finding her own way home. Elara's steps carried her deeper into the forest, where the path grew narrower, and the air felt thick with stories left unsaid. The silver lantern's light glowed softly in her hands, a promise that she would not be lost, and that neither would the souls who lingered in the darkness. The trees began to thin, and she stepped into a clearing that took her breath away. Before her lay a garden unlike any she had ever seen. Moonlight spilled across marble pathways lined with flowers that glowed faintly, their petals shimmering with the colors of memory. Soft blues, pale silvers, warm golds. Each bloom seemed to hold a fragment of a forgotten song, a whispered wish, or a promise never kept. At the center of the garden stood a stone fountain, its waters flowing clear and bright. The sound of it was music, soft and soothing, weaving through the air like a gentle lullaby. As Elara approached, she felt the lantern's light pulse in her hands, as if it recognized this place. She paused at the edge of the fountain, watching the ripples dance across the surface. In them, she saw flickers of faces, some laughing, some weeping, some simply gazing back at her with quiet longing. She realized that this was a place where stories came to rest, waiting for a keeper to listen. A figure stepped from the shadows. An old gardener, his hair white as snow, his eyes bright with a kindness that reached into her soul. He carried a small pair of shears, and as he moved, he tended the glowing flowers with gentle hands. "You have come to the Garden of Echoes," he said, his voice like the rustle of autumn leaves. "Each flower here blooms from a memory left behind each petal, a fragment of a life once lived." Elara looked around, wonder in her eyes. "How do they grow?" she asked softly. The gardener smiled. "Memories never truly die, child. They take root in the hearts of those who remember, or in places like this, where time itself slows to listen." He nodded at the lantern in her hands. "Your light awakens them. It calls to the stories waiting in the shadows." Elara watched as the gardener clipped a single silver blossom and offered it to her. She took it carefully, feeling the pulse of memory in its delicate petals. "Will you plant it?" he asked. She nodded. Kneeling by the fountain, she pressed the flower's stem into the soft earth. As she did, she felt a warmth spread through her fingertips, and in the lantern's glow, the flower bloomed brighter, its light a soft beacon in the night. The gardener placed a hand on her shoulder. "Each story you guide home will find a place here in this garden, and in time you will see, even the smallest light can keep the darkness at bay." Elara rose, her heart filled with a quiet strength. She thanked the gardener and turned back to the path, her lantern's glow brighter than before. As she walked away from the garden, she realized that the lantern's light was not just a guide for others. It was a promise to herself that she would listen and remember, and in doing so, never be truly lost again. Elara left the Garden of Echoes, behind the silver blossom she had planted still bright in her memory. The path wound onward, and with each step, the forest grew softer, the shadows less menacing. The lantern's glow warmed her fingers, and she felt as if she carried a small sun in her hands. She came upon a river, its waters smooth as glass, reflecting the pale moon above. The river was wide and slow-moving, its surface shimmering with lights that danced like fireflies. Elara paused at the bank, listening to the soft murmur of water. It was a sound like a lullaby, calming and endless. A small boat lay moored to the shore, carved from pale wood that glowed softly in the moonlight. Its prow was shaped like the head of a swan, and in its hull sat a figure wrapped in a cloak of midnight blue. The figure raised its head as Elara approached. Beneath the hood, she glimpsed a face as old as the river itself. Eyes like pools of starlight, a smile that carried the weight of centuries. "Lantern Keeper," the figure said softly. "Will you ride the river of dreams?" Elara hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she whispered. The figure gestured to the boat, and she stepped in, clutching her lantern. The boat rocked gently, then drifted into the current, the river's song, weaving around her like a silken thread. As they glided downstream, Elara saw shapes in the water, memories and dreams that shimmered like silver fish. Some were bright and joyous children chasing fireflies, lovers dancing beneath ancient trees. Others were shadowed dreams that had curdled into nightmares, twisted and silent. The figure spoke in a voice that echoed like the river's murmur. "These are the dreams of the lost, drifting between worlds. Some find their way home. Others fade, carried by the current into forever." Elara watched the dreams swirl around the boat, her lantern's light casting gentle ripples across the water. She saw a young woman weeping as she sang to a moonlit lake, her voice a lament for a love long gone. She saw an old man planting seeds in a field of starlight, each seed sprouting into a memory of laughter. She turned to the figure. "Can I help them? Can I guide them?" The figure inclined its head. "You are the keeper. Your light shows the way, but each dream must choose to follow. Some will find peace, some will cling to the shadows." Elara understood. She raised the lantern higher, its light spilling across the river. The dreams drew closer, pulled by its warmth. She whispered words of comfort, her voice soft and steady. "You are not forgotten," she said to the river. "You are seen. You are remembered." The river seemed to sigh, its current slowing for a moment, as if pausing to listen. The dreams glowed brighter, their shapes clearer, and then one by one they drifted into the lantern's light and vanished. Not lost, but guided home. The boat reached the far bank, and Elara stepped out, her heart full. The figure remained in the boat, its eyes calm and knowing. "Thank you, Keeper," it said. "The river is always here, waiting for those who dare to listen." Elara bowed her head. She turned and stepped back onto the path. The lantern in her hands burning with a steadier light than ever before. She knew now that the river flowed through every soul, and that her journey had only just begun. Elara's path led her deeper into the forest, the moon climbing higher, as if to watch her journey. The silver lantern glowed with a light that felt more like a heartbeat than a flame, and she found comfort in its warmth. The air was fragrant with night-blooming flowers, their scent sweet and heavy. It reminded her of lullabies sung in childhood, of gentle arms and whispered promises. In the stillness, she heard a song drifting through the trees, soft, clear, and impossibly beautiful. She followed the sound, her steps quickening with wonder. At last, she found herself in a small glade where moonlight pooled like silver water. In the center perched a nightingale, its feathers the color of twilight, its eyes bright with secrets. The bird sang each note a thread of light weaving through the darkness. As Elara listened, the world seemed to slow. The rustle of leaves, the sigh of the wind, everything hushed to honor the nightingale's song. She felt tears prick her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the piercing beauty of the melody. The lantern in her hands flickered in time with the music, and for a moment, it felt as if the song was meant just for her. The nightingale paused, tilting its head to study her. "Lantern Keeper," it sang in a voice like a silver bell. "Do you hear the stories in my song?" Elara nodded, her voice caught in her throat. "I hear them, but I don't understand." The nightingale fluttered down, perching on a branch near her shoulder. Each note is a story, each pause a memory, it said. The forest remembers everything, every laugh, every tear, every dream left unspoken. I am the keeper of those echoes, the singer of what once was. Elara's heart ached with a tenderness she could not name. Will you teach me? She whispered. The nightingale nodded. Listen not with your ears, but with your heart. Let the stories find you, and you will become their voice. So Elara closed her eyes. She let the nightingale's song wash over her, feeling it thread through her soul. In that moment, she saw visions in the music. A child's laughter, a mother's lullaby, the quiet sorrow of a farewell. Each note was a memory, fragile and shining. When she opened her eyes, the nightingale was gone. But the song lingered, woven into the air around her, and in her heart she knew she carried it with her now. Elara lifted the lantern high, its light singing in response to the melody she had heard. She walked on her steps steady and sure, her heart alive with the music of the forest. She was no longer just a keeper, she was a part of the song. Elara moved through the forest with a newfound sense of peace. The nightingale's song still echoed in her mind, a melody that gave shape to the hush of the trees and the sigh of the wind. The silver lantern in her hands glowed brighter now, a quiet testament to the stories she carried. The path led her to a small pool of water, as still as glass, and ringed by stones worn smooth with age. Moonlight touched its surface, turning it into a mirror of the sky. Elara paused at the edge, peering into the depths. In the reflection she saw herself, but not as she was. She looked older, her hair threaded with starlight, her eyes wise and calm. Around her, the forest glowed softly, each shadow a story waiting to be told. A voice spoke from the water, soft and distant like a memory. Keeper, it murmured, do you see the light you carry? Elara knelt at the water's edge, her lantern held close to her chest. I see, but I'm still learning what it means, she admitted. I carry the stories of the lost, but I wonder, what of my own story? What of the light within me? The water rippled, and the reflection shifted. She saw herself as a child running barefoot through meadows of wildflowers, laughter bright in the air. She saw moments of sorrow, too, times when the weight of the world had pressed too heavily on her shoulders. But in each memory, there was a thread of light, a spark that had never truly gone out. The light within you is not separate from the stories you carry, the voice whispered. Each soul you guide, each memory you honor, is a reflection of your own journey. In giving them peace, you find your own. Elara touched the water's surface, and for a moment she felt the lantern's warmth seep through her skin into her bones. She understood then that her role as keeper was not just about guiding others. It was about weaving her own story into the tapestry of all the souls who had come before, and all who would come after. She stood the lantern steady in her hands. The pool shimmered, and the reflection of her older self smiled softly before fading into the moonlight. Elara took a deep breath, feeling the air alive with possibility. As she turned back to the path, she realized that the journey was not about reaching an end. It was about the quiet moments of understanding along the way. The light she carried was not a burden, but a promise. A promise that no story, no matter how small or forgotten, would be left unheard. The forest seemed to breathe with her as she walked on the lantern's glow, a soft chorus of every story she had gathered and every story yet to come. Elara's journey carried her deeper into the forest, each step a gentle echo of the stories she had gathered. The silver lantern in her hands pulsed with a quiet warmth, its light a steady reminder of the promise she had made, to listen, to remember, to guide. The forest changed as she walked. The air grew cooler, the trees taller and more ancient. Their branches arched high above, forming a cathedral of living wood. The path narrowed until it disappeared entirely, and Elara found herself standing before a grove of silent trees. The silent grove. She could feel its hush in her bones. The lantern's glow seemed to dim as if the very air absorbed its light. No birds sang here, no wind stirred the leaves. Even the moonlight was caught in the branches, silver strands woven into the shadows. Elara took a step forward, her breath catching in her throat. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her, the weight of every story that had ever been left unspoken. In the quiet, she heard the heartbeat of the forest itself, slow, patient, eternal. She paused before one of the great trees, its bark gnarled and knotted like the lines of an old face. Lifting the lantern, she let its light fall across the trunk. Words shimmered there, faint and fleeting. Names and memories etched into the wood by hands long gone. "Who are you?" she whispered to the tree, her voice soft as a sigh. No answer came, but she felt a shift in the air, a stirring that felt like a breath held and released. The tree seemed to lean closer, and in its silence, Elara sensed a story too deep for words. A story that had waited centuries for someone to listen. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead against the rough bark. The lantern's glow seeped into the tree, and she felt it respond, a slow pulse of memory old as the earth. In that moment, she understood the silent grove was not empty. It was a library of souls, each tree a testament to a life that had left its mark on the world. Their voices were not lost. They had simply grown too quiet for the world to hear. Elara whispered, "I see you. I will remember." The lantern flared softly, and the air around her seemed to sigh in relief. The grove did not speak, but in its silence, Elara felt a profound peace. A sense that even the most quiet stories mattered, that even the softest voices deserved to be honored. She stepped back, her heart steady. The path ahead was still hidden in shadow, but she no longer feared the darkness. She carried the light of the silent grove within her now, a promise that even the quietest stories would not be forgotten. As she turned to leave, the forest seemed to lean back, branches parting to reveal the path forward. Elara walked on the silver lantern, a gentle star in the hush of the night. Elara's journey carried her deeper into the forest. Each step a gentle echo of the stories she had gathered. The silver lantern in her hands pulsed with a quiet warmth, its light a steady reminder of the promise she had made. To listen, to remember, to guide. The forest changed as she walked. The air grew cooler, the trees taller and more ancient. Their branches arched high above, forming a cathedral of living wood. The path narrowed until it disappeared entirely, and Elara found herself standing before a grove of silent trees. The silent grove. She could feel its hush in her bones. The lantern's glow seemed to dim, as if the very air absorbed its light. No birds sang here, no wind stirred the leaves. Even the moonlight was caught in the branches, silver strands woven into the shadows. Elara took a step forward, her breath catching in her throat. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her, the weight of every story that had ever been left unspoken. In the quiet, she heard the heartbeat of the forest itself, slow, patient, eternal. She paused before one of the great trees, its bark gnarled and knotted like the lines of an old face. Lifting the lantern, she let its light fall across the trunk. Words shimmered there, faint and fleeting. Names and memories etched into the wood by hands long gone. "Who are you?" she whispered to the tree, her voice soft as a sigh. No answer came, but she felt a shift in the air, a stirring that felt like a breath held and released. The tree seemed to lean closer, and in its silence, Elara sensed a story too deep for words. A story that had waited centuries for someone to listen. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead against the rough bark. The lantern's glow seeped into the tree, and she felt it respond. A slow pulse of memory, old as the earth. In that moment, she understood the silent grove was not empty. It was a library of souls, each tree a testament to a life that had left its mark on the world. Their voices were not lost. They had simply grown too quiet for the world to hear. Elara whispered, "I see you. I will remember." The lantern flared softly, and the air around her seemed to sigh in relief. The grove did not speak, but in its silence, Elara felt a profound peace, a sense that even the most quiet stories mattered, that even the softest voices deserved to be honored. She stepped back, her heart steady. The path ahead was still hidden in shadow, but she no longer feared the darkness. She carried the light of the silent grove within her now, a promise that even the quietest stories would not be forgotten. As she turned to leave, the forest seemed to lean back, branches parting to reveal the path forward. Elara walked on the silver lantern, a gentle star in the hush of the night. Elara's feet carried her from the silent grove, her heart still echoing with the hush of that sacred place. The forest around her seemed to breathe with a newfound softness, as if the trees themselves were grateful for the lantern's gentle light. She followed the path as it wound through a hollow where the ground was soft with moss, and the air smelled of rain. The silver lantern's glow was steady in her hands, guiding her forward through the gathering mist. Ahead she saw it, a bridge arcing over a stream so calm it mirrored the sky. The bridge was carved from pale stone, worn smooth by the passage of countless souls. It rose into the fog, vanishing into the mists that drifted across the water like memories half remembered. Elara paused at the foot of the bridge, the lantern's light reflecting in the water below. She could feel the quiet power of this place, the sense that it was both threshold and passage, a place where stories met and parted. A figure stood on the bridge, cloaked in gray, its face hidden beneath a hood. It was neither young nor old, neither woman nor man, a presence both timeless and gentle. As Elara stepped closer, the figure turned, and in its shadowed gaze, she saw the weight of countless partings. "Lantern Keeper," the figure said, its voice like the hush of falling rain. "Do you know where this bridge leads?" Elara shook her head. "I only know that I must cross it." The figure nodded. "This is the Bridge of Mists. It spans the river of what has been and what might be. Here, the stories of the past meet the dreams of the future, and only those who are ready can cross." Elara felt a shiver run through her. She lifted the lantern higher, and its light glowed brighter, cutting through the mist. "I am ready," she said softly. The figure stepped aside, and Elara began to walk. Each step echoed across the bridge, the stone cool beneath her feet. The mist closed around her, muffling the world, until all she could hear was the steady beat of her own heart, and the faintest whispers of stories waiting to be told. Halfway across, she paused. In the mist, she saw shapes, glimpses of what had been and what might be. She saw herself as a child dancing in the rain. She saw herself as an old woman, her hair silver, and her hands still steady on the lantern. She saw 1,000 other lives, each one a possibility, each one a thread in the great tapestry of the world. She understood then that her journey was not just about gathering the stories of others. It was about weaving her own, about walking the bridge between who she had been and who she might yet become. When she reached the far side, the figure was waiting. "You have crossed the bridge," it said, and in its voice she heard the faintest smile. "Remember, Keeper, the journey is not only for the souls you guide, it is for you as well." Elara nodded, her heart full. She stepped from the bridge, the lantern in her hands glowing brighter than ever, its light a promise that no matter how far she traveled, she would never lose her way. The air grew cooler as Elara stepped from the Bridge of Mists, the fog parting to reveal a night sky so wide and deep it seemed to swallow the world. The forest gave way to a glade where the ground was soft with moss, and above 1,000 stars burned like distant lanterns in the velvet dark. She paused, the silver lantern in her hands, casting a pool of light that seemed to dance with the glow of the stars. The hush of the forest was deep here, yet it was not empty. She could feel the quiet hum of something ancient and powerful, a presence that watched and waited. At the center of the glade stood a great tree, its branches reaching high into the sky as if to touch the stars themselves. Draped among its boughs was a veil of gossamer light, a shimmering tapestry that shifted and flowed like water. In its folds, constellations formed and dissolved, a map of stories written in starlight. Elara approached the tree breathless with wonder. As she lifted the lantern, the veil seemed to sigh, shimmering brighter in response. She reached out fingers, brushing the delicate threads, and in that moment the veil parted, revealing a figure woven of light and shadow. The figure's eyes were pools of night, and its voice was the hush of eternity. "Lantern Keeper, It said you have come to the Vale of Stars, where all stories are born and where all must return. Elara swallowed her heart beating in time with the lantern's gentle glow. What am I meant to see here? She asked softly. The figure gestured, and the veil shimmered, shifting to show her images. Memories and dreams woven together like threads in a tapestry. She saw lovers dancing beneath the moon, children chasing fireflies, old souls sitting by the fire and whispering secrets to the night. She's seen it herself too. Not as she was, but as she might be a keeper of light, a weaver of stories, a guardian of the quiet places where souls come to rest. In that vision, she felt a quiet certainty, a sense that her journey was not an accident, but a calling. The stories you gather, the figure said, are more than memories. They are seeds of light planted in the dark. Each one you carry, each one you honor, helps to weave the pattern of the world. Elara felt tears prick her eyes, not from sorrow, but from the weight of the beauty she saw. The endless dance of stories, the way each one shone brighter for being shared. She whispered, I will carry them, I will remember. The figure smiled, a curve of starlight and shadow. Then go, keeper. The veil will always be here waiting to remind you that no story is ever truly lost. Elara stepped back, the lantern in her hands, glowing with the light of the stars. She turned from the tree and walked on her steps, sure her heart light. The sky above seemed to shimmer with approval, and in the hush of the glade, she felt the truth of her journey settle in her bones. She was not just a keeper of stories, she was a keeper of hope. Elara followed the soft glow of the lantern deeper into the forest, her steps guided by the quiet music of the stars above. The trees parted once more, revealing a pool of water so still it looked like a mirror laid across the earth. The wishing pool. Moonlight poured across the surface, turning it to silver glass. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the scent of moss and wildflowers. Elara paused at the water's edge, her lantern casting ripples of light that shimmered like tiny constellations on the water. She had heard whispers of such pools, places where the wishes of the heart could be spoken, and the forest itself would listen. She felt the weight of her own unspoken hopes pressing against her ribs, a gentle ache she had carried for so long, she had nearly forgotten its shape. She knelt beside the pool, the silver lantern steady in her hands. In its light, the water shone like liquid moonlight, and for a moment she saw her reflection. Not just her face, but the glow of the lantern's light in her eyes, the stories she carried in the soft lines of her expression. A voice gentle as falling snow spoke from the water. Keeper, it murmured. Do you have a wish? Elara blinked, surprised. A wish, she echoed softly. The water rippled, and in its depths she saw flashes of memories. Her own laughter as a child, the warmth of her mother's embrace, the first time she had felt the weight of the lantern in her hands. You have given light to many, the voice said. But what light do you seek for yourself? Elara closed her eyes, letting the question settle in her heart. She thought of the journey she had taken, the souls she had guided, the quiet moments of understanding she had shared. And she realized that while she had listened to so many stories, she had never truly given voice to her own. I wish, she said softly, to never lose my way, to always carry this light even when I feel alone, and I wish for the strength to keep listening even when it is hard. The pool shimmered moonlight weaving across the surface in gentle waves. A keeper's wish is never forgotten, the voice replied. Cast it into the water, and the forest will carry it to the stars. Elara cupped her hands around the lantern's light, breathing in the hush of the night. She leaned forward and let her wish fall like a single tear into the pool. The water glowed softly, a heartbeat of silver light that spread outward in gentle ripples. She watched as the ripples carried her wish across the pool, and in their quiet movement she felt a promise. That even the smallest hope could grow, that even the quietest wish could find a home. When the light faded, the water stilled once more, but in her heart, Elara felt the strength of her wish, echoing like a quiet song. She stood, the lantern in her hands, glowing warmer than before. She turned from the pool, her steps light, her heart steady. She knew now that her journey was not just about gathering stories. It was about tending the small, fragile hopes that lived in every soul, including her own. And in that gentle understanding, she felt the forest sigh with her, a quiet promise that she was never truly alone. Elara walked away from the wishing pool with a quiet resolve. The forest around her felt deeper now, each shadow a story she had yet to hear. The silver lantern in her hands glowed with a steady warmth, but she could feel the weight of every soul she had guided, every memory she had gathered. It was a burden she carried willingly, but tonight it felt heavy. She paused beneath a great oak tree, its branches thick with moonlight. The air was cool, and for the first time she felt the ache of her own weariness. She sank to the mossy ground, her back against the tree's sturdy trunk, and let the lantern rest in her lap. The forest was silent around her, as if holding its breath. In the hush, Elara closed her eyes and listened to the beat of her own heart, slow, steady, and tired. A voice spoke from the darkness, gentle and knowing. "Lantern Keeper," it murmured, "even a light-bearer must rest." She opened her eyes to see a figure emerging from the shadows. An old woman, her hair white as snow, her eyes bright with the light of countless moons. She carried a staff carved with runes, each one glowing softly like embers. "Who are you?" Elara asked, her voice a quiet whisper. The woman smiled. "I am called the Hearth Keeper," she said. "I tend the fires that warm the souls of wanderers, and I have walked these paths longer than memory can hold." She knelt beside Elara, her hands gentle as she reached for the lantern. "May I?" she asked. Elara hesitated, then nodded. The Hearthkeeper cradled the lantern in her weathered hands, and for a moment the glow brightened as if grateful for her touch. "You carry the stories of many," the Hearthkeeper said softly. "Each one precious, each one a light in the darkness. But even the brightest flame must rest, or it will burn itself out." Elara felt tears prick her eyes. "I promise to guide them all," she whispered. "I promise to remember." The Hearthkeeper placed the lantern back in her hands, her touch warm as embers. "And you will, but remember this child. A keeper who forgets her own light will lose her way. Rest is not weakness. It is the breath that keeps the flame alive." Elara let out a slow breath, the weight of her exhaustion softening in the old woman's words. She closed her eyes again, and for a moment she let the lantern's warmth wash over her, a gentle balm to her weary heart. When she opened her eyes, the Hearthkeeper was gone, vanished into the hush of the forest. But Elara felt her presence like a quiet promise, that she was not alone, that even in her weariness she was still guided by the light she carried. She rose the lantern steady in her hands and stepped back onto the path. The forest seemed to lean closer, as if to cradle her in its quiet embrace. She walked on her steps lighter, her heart full of the knowledge that even a keeper must rest, and that in the pause, the light could grow even brighter. Elara woke with the hush of the forest still wrapped around her. The silver lantern rested against her chest, its glow gentle and reassuring. She stood feeling the strength in her limbs return and knew she was ready to continue. The path ahead was narrow, winding through ancient trees whose roots wove a tapestry across the forest floor. She walked with quiet purpose, each step a promise to the souls she carried and the ones she had yet to find. As dawn touched the sky with the faintest light, she came upon a clearing. In the center stood a stone altar, weathered by time but still strong. Upon it lay a single candle unlit and waiting. Elara paused, the lantern's light brushing across the stone. She understood without words. This was a place of offering, a place to leave behind burdens too heavy to bear alone. She stepped forward, feeling the weight of the stories she had gathered pressing against her ribs. Each soul she had guided had left its mark upon her heart. A gentle ache, a whisper of memory that lingered long after the shadows had faded. She placed the lantern beside the candle and knelt, closing her eyes. In the hush of the forest, she let her heart speak. "I have carried the light for so many," she whispered. "I have gathered their stories, their hopes and fears, and I have held them close, but now I offer them back to the forest so they may rest and bloom anew." She took a deep breath, and with the smallest spark of her own light, she touched the candle's wick. A tiny flame bloomed soft and warm, and in its glow she felt the forest breathe around her. A sigh of gratitude, a quiet promise. The flame danced in the gentle dawn, and Elara knew it was more than a single light. It was a gift, her offering to the souls who had trusted her, a beacon to guide them, even when she could not walk beside them. She rose the lantern in her hands, burning brighter for the sharing of its light. She understood now that to be a keeper was not to hoard the stories she gathered, but to let them flow back into the world, like a river returning to the sea. The altar stood silent as she turned away the candle's flame, steady in the growing light of day. Elara stepped back onto the path, her heart lighter her lantern, a gentle chorus of every soul she had ever known. And as she walked on, she felt the forest shift around her. The hush of the trees, the whisper of the wind. A quiet promise that even the smallest light when shared could warm the darkest night. Elara left the altar behind the candle's gentle glow, still warm in her memory. The forest seemed to sigh in response, the hush of the trees like a blessing that wrapped around her shoulders. She walked with quiet steps, the silver lantern in her hands, steady and true. The path wound deeper into the forest where the shadows danced with a gentleness she had not noticed before. She felt no fear, only a deep sense of belonging, as if the forest itself had accepted her as one of its own. As she walked, she became aware of another presence, a soft rustle in the underbrush, a flicker of movement at the edge of her vision. She paused, lifting the lantern, and in its light, she saw a small creature step forward. It was a fox, its fur the color of midnight, its eyes bright as starlight. It regarded her with quiet curiosity, its gaze steady and unafraid. Elara knelt, her heart beating with wonder. "Hello," she said softly. "Are you lost too?" The fox tilted its head, then stepped closer. It sniffed the lantern, its nose brushing against the cool silver, and Elara felt a warmth spread through her fingers, as if the fox carried a piece of the forest's light within its heart. "You are not lost," she whispered, a smile curling her lips. "You are a guide." The fox blinked, then turned and padded down the path, pausing to look back at her. Elara understood. The fox would walk with her, a companion, to share the quiet journey. She rose and followed her steps, light and sure. The fox led her through glades, dappled with moonlight beneath branches that wove patterns of shadow and silver. It paused often, as if to listen to the hush of the world, and Elara found herself doing the same. In the presence of the fox, she felt the stories she carried settle into her heart like stones in a riverbed. Not burdens, but pieces of a whole. She realized that even a keeper needed a companion. Someone to share the path, to remind her that the light she carried was never hers alone. The forest seemed to watch them as they walked, each step a quiet promise that she was not alone. The lantern's glow mingled with the soft gleam of the fox's eyes. And in that shared light, Elara felt her own spirit grow steadier, stronger. When they paused to rest beneath an ancient tree, the fox curled up beside her, its warmth a gentle comfort. Elara closed her eyes, the hush of the forest a lullaby that carried her into dreams. In those dreams, she saw herself walking always with the fox at her side. Through the hush of the silent grove, across the bridge of mists, into the veil of stars. And in every step she felt the truth of her journey, that even the smallest light shared could guide another home. Elara woke with the dawn, the silver lantern still glowing softly in her hands, and the fox curled against her side. The forest was hushed in that tender hour before sunrise, the air cool and fragrant with dew. She rose slowly, careful not to wake her companion, and for a moment she simply stood and breathed in the quiet. She felt the weight of her journey in her bones, not a burden, but a gentle gravity that tethered her to the world she had chosen to walk. Each step she had taken, each story she had gathered, had woven itself into her soul like a song waiting to be sung. As the first light of the sun spilled across the forest floor, she lifted the lantern and let its glow mingle with the dawn. The fox stirred, blinking up at her with eyes that mirrored the morning sky, and together they began to walk once more. The path led them to a hilltop where the trees parted to reveal the horizon, bathed in the pale gold of the rising sun. Elara paused, her breath caught in her throat at the beauty of it. A world reborn in light, each shadow gilded by the promise of the day. She felt something shift in her heart, a melody rising soft and sure. It was not a song she had heard before, but one she had carried all along. The quiet chorus of every story she had ever held, every soul she had ever guided. She began to hum, her voice a thread of silver that wove through the morning air. The fox lifted its head, listening, and the lantern glowed brighter in response. The song grew note by note, a lullaby for the forest, for the souls she carried, for the light that had become her own. It was a song of hope, of the way even the smallest light could warm the darkness, of the promise that every story mattered, no matter how softly it was spoken. As she sang, she felt the hush of the forest lean closer, the leaves trembling as if to join in. The fox pressed close to her leg, its warmth a quiet harmony, and the silver lantern in her hands pulsed in time with her heartbeat. When the last note faded, the world seemed to sigh in the quiet. The sun rose higher, and the shadows retreated, leaving only the soft glow of the lantern and the warmth of the fox beside her. Elara knew then that the journey was never truly done, that each dawn was a chance to begin again, to carry the light a little farther, to listen a little deeper. And in the hush of that morning, she felt the song settle in her bones, a promise to herself and to the souls she carried that she would never stop listening. The fox nuzzled her hand, and she smiled her heart light. She turned from the hilltop, the lantern in her hands, a quiet sun, and together they walked on their steps, a gentle rhythm in the hush of the waking world. The path wound gently through the forest as Elara walked, the fox at her side, and the silver lantern in her hands glowing with a quiet certainty. Dawn had fully broken now, each beam of sunlight weaving through the branches like threads of gold, and the hush of the forest felt less like silence and more like a soft breath of welcome. She felt the weight of her journey in the way the light flickered in her lantern. Each flicker a memory, each glow a story she had carried. And she realized that what she carried was not a burden at all. It was a promise that every soul deserved to be heard, that every story deserved to be remembered. The path brought her to the edge of the forest where the trees thinned and the sky stretched wide and open. Before her lay a meadow awash in morning light, the grass jeweled with dew, and the air sweet with the scent of wildflowers. Elara paused, her breath caught in her throat at the beauty of it. A world open and waiting, full of promise. She stepped into the meadow, the soft earth cool beneath her feet. The fox moved beside her, its gaze calm and knowing. She felt the stories she had gathered settle in her heart like a quiet chorus, each one a note in the song she carried within her. The lantern's glow pulsed brighter, and in its light she saw shapes moving at the edge of the meadow. The souls she had guided, each one a flicker of gentle light. They gathered around her silent and watchful, their faces calm and full of peace. One by one they bowed their heads in thanks, their light weaving together into a tapestry of warmth that wrapped around her like a cloak. Elara felt her heart swell with quiet pride, not for herself, but for them, for the way they had trusted her light to guide them home. The fox pressed close to her side, and Elara knelt, resting the lantern on the earth. She placed a hand on the ground, feeling the thrum of life beneath her fingers, the heartbeat of the world itself, ancient and enduring. "I have walked far," she whispered, her voice steady and soft. "I have carried your stories, and in them I have found my own. I will keep walking. I will keep listening." The meadow seemed to breathe with her, the air alive with the promise of the new day. The souls around her faded, their light joining the warmth of the morning sun, and Elara felt no sadness, only a quiet joy knowing that their stories would never be forgotten. She rose, the lantern in her hands, glowing with a warmth that was no longer just for others. It was for her too. She looked to the horizon where the sun rose bright and unafraid, and she smiled. She took a step forward, and then another, the fox padding at her side, and the song of the forest in her heart. She knew the path would not always be easy, that there would be shadows and silence and stories too heavy to bear. But she also knew that the light she carried was stronger than the darkness, that every step was a promise to the souls she guided and to herself. She was the keeper of the lantern, And in every dawn she found her own.